All right, okay. Hello. We're going to turn desktop sound off there. So the only thing you'll hear me today is my voice. Hello. Right. Well, my name's Rob. I'm not using the webcam today. Normally I do YouTube, you know, let's play videos, various games and everything. but I've got a lot of free time on my hands at the moment, and I've always been interested in actual game development, and recently I learned of this program called Godot. And I believe it is pronounced Godot, as in robot. So I believe that is actually the correct pronunciation. I know some people like to call it Godot or something like that. It's a game engine like Unity 3D, you know, the Unreal game engine, with one huge difference is it's open source. It's completely and utterly free. You're free to download it, you're free to create whatever you want with it, and you don't have to pay anybody anything. You know, it's completely open source. So I thought I might give it a go myself, and I thought I would use my channel as a way of documenting my my learning of it, basically, as I educate myself, or as I am educated by others on how to use this program. I am a complete novice. I've never used... I'm not a complete novice. I'm a novice. I wouldn't say I'm a complete novice. I have used Unity 3D in the past for a hobby because I got the Oculus Rift development kit when it first came out years ago, and then Unity 3D implemented Oculus Rift support for that development kit, and so I did use a little bit. I did create some 3D games within Unity, but that was years ago, and that was probably to the extent of my knowledge of 3D game creation, or any game creation really, other than some scripting in Second Life when I created certain objects. I mean, so I am a novice. I won't say I'm a complete novice, but I am a novice very in regards to all of this programming, scripting, game creation. I know the fundamentals, but I don't necessarily know anything else. I don't know the gist of how it's done. You know, I'm not a C# programmer or a C++ programmer or even Java, even though I have touched on it but never really taken it any further. So I won't say I'm a complete novice, but I am a novice, definitely. And I always wanted to learn like a game engine, but I never seem to follow it through. I start and then I stop. So the reason I decided to stream this live on my channel is because hopefully maybe it would encourage me to continue to keep learning. And also I hope that maybe others will be watching this and might want to learn along with me, like in a classroom environment. In the description I will place any of the resources that I'm using to learn in the description as I learn them. So because this is live, the description will update live as well. So Godot itself can be downloaded from this website here, which I've got on my screen here. GodotEngine.org. Just visit that. So again, there's a link in the description. You can also download it from your Steam account. If you've got Steam, which nearly everyone who's on a PC has got Steam, just type Godot in the shop and it'll also come in there, so you can install it directly from Steam as well. The download itself is extremely small. Sorry, I'm on Windows 64-bit machine. As you can see, Godot 3.1 is the latest released. It was released, well, 10 days ago. 64-bit, and it is extremely... It's only a 22 megabyte download. That's how small it is. It is nothing compared to other things like Unity. It is so small. So once you've just downloaded it, just install it as you normally would do, and then you can launch it. And it should, when you launch it, it should look something like this here. Okay, That's what you'll be presented with the very first time you launch it. This is actually the very first time I've actually launched it. I'm not going to lie and say I know nothing. I have watched some YouTube videos, but I haven't actually launched the program before today. So you'll be learning along with me, or you'll be watching me learn as I go along. I haven't touched it. I haven't opened it. This is as far as I've got. I've just launched it and obviously reshaped the window. Now what you'll see on the screen here is on the left here is the actual program, and this bit here, which I will try to make, is just my chat. It's my chat window, so I can see if any of you guys are what's saying, because on my second monitor, and I don't have a third monitor. If I had a third monitor, the chat window will be on my third monitor, but I've only got the 2 monitors. So my second monitor will actually be, I'll be using for my resources for the videos that I'll be following along with. Now, little disclaimer here. I will be referencing YouTube videos, and today I'm going to be following HeartBeast, who is a YouTuber. He's got 120,000 subscribers. He has some playlists here on Godot itself. Okay. And I'll be starting with this playlist here. So what I will not be doing is I will not be showing his videos on my channel. That is not what this is about. You will not hear his commentary or anything. That will be all in my ears. You won't be able to hear that. I'm doing that because he has a right to be protected, and I would like to learn from him, and I would like to share that learning process with you. But if you want to see his videos, then visit his channel, click on his links, give him the views that you want. If you want to follow along with me, by all means, you can do so by going to his channel as well. If you have the ability to have 2 YouTube windows open and 2 monitors and all that. But for me, this is more about not me teaching you. This is about me learning myself and sharing that experience with you. If you want to learn yourself at your own pace, then please, and want to follow along or anything like that, then please go to HeartBeast, and you can find it. And it'll be this playlist that we'll be viewing today, the Godot free 2D platform game, which basically just teaches you some of the basics of, I think it's that one that we're doing. Let me just check. Yeah, it is that one. It's not this one. That will probably be the next one I do after I've done this one here, and then I'll probably be moving on to that one. So again, as I go through the videos, I'll post a link directly to the video that I'm listening to, so you guys can, if you want to do it yourself, you'll find the links in the description below. Just go there. I'm not affiliated with anyone that I'm using or anything like that. Nobody's paying me to do any of this or anything. It's just something that I wanted to do myself, and I thought maybe some people might get a kick out of. And who knows, maybe we'll get people in the chat who can help me. If they have already done it, they might be able to help me out as well. Right. So I will start my video at my end. You should not hear it or see it. I will just be going along with it, listening to him, and then I'll try and tell you what I'm trying to do while I'm doing it, once I've know. But yeah, it'll probably be a little less talking from me now, more listening. But I am going to start with the first video now, and a link to that video you can find in the description. There we go. So he's just going through where you can download it and everything at the moment. Again, you can find a link in my description for that, or through Steam. All right. All right, so he wants me to create a new project. I'm going to call it Platform 1. Now I've already browsed where I want it. I've already got a Godot folder set up. So yeah, to create a new project, you just click New Project. You name your project here, Platform 1. Your project path, Godot. Here. Now, let me just create an edit. That launches this. Let me just reside it. Sorry, I'm not following the video at the moment. And the only reason I'm doing this is just so I can have that chat on the window. Okay. Now then, I just want to see. Okay. Now that isn't really what I wanted. So let us my project, quit project list. Yes. Alright. Let's remove that. New project. Right. I think this is okay. You'll probably go through this anyway, but I'm thinking ahead. So let's change this to D. Okay, and then Platform 1. Create folder. Right. Okay, and now that should have create an edit. Once again, I'll just resize this window. Bit of annoyance, I know. So if I look at that, right, there we go. So I can get rid of these. Delete and delete, I think. Yeah, all right. All right, so I mean, I'll just quickly explain what I did then. I created, you know, a separate folder for all my Godot documents in my D drive here. So when I created the new project, just bear with me a second, sorry about this. Alright, so basically what I was doing there was, we'll remove it. So what I wanted to do was, I didn't want I wanted the project to go in the Godot folder, but I wanted it to go into its own individual folder. So, just delete that. So when I initially created it, I'd created it and it went into the Godot folder, but it didn't go into its own folder. So the Godot folder, if I could create a second or a third project, it would have been a complete mess. So what I did was I obviously named the project, which to me I'm going to call it Platform 1. I then browsed to the folder I wanted, which is my Godot folder on my D drive. Okay. And then I clicked create folder, so it created a project path folder, and then I did create and edit. So that was what that was all about. That's why, just to keep things neat and tidy. Right, okay. And now that I've done that, he's probably going to tell me exactly what the hell, how I should have done that. So he didn't actually show me any of that. Alright, so we're going to be making a 2D, so we'll click on 2D. Alright, now again, he hasn't mentioned this in the video, but I do know through my how do you freaking move about? Now this is the, obviously it's a 2D platform scene, so this is your creation. The blue box, this bit here, from what I understand, is what will appear in the game. So anything within this area here that you build into is what will appear on your device. You know, so will be is basically the screen of the game. I know you're not limited to just there, because obviously if you're doing a scrolling platform, you know, you're going to build across here, and obviously the camera will move with it. But this is anything within this circle here, I know appears on screen when you're, so keep that in mind when you're designing your game. All right. So he's explaining how it works as a tree structure. So to start, you want to add a node, basically. Now, my version is slightly different to what he's doing by the looks of it. So this could be a little bit trickier than I thought, because we're clearly not working on the same version. So let me just see what he's doing. Okay, so this is strange, because I mean, my one, right, so this is different. The layout that he's showing is different. The inspector and node is in a different position. All right, okay, so I'm seeing an import. Ah, right, okay, I see. Let's just change it. No. Let's see if we can so it's the same of what he's got. Sorry, because this might be the same for you as well. You might be seeing this. All right, there we go. So that matches now. So basically what the problem was there for me was on his screen, it looked like this. Okay. He had everything on the right. So it didn't match up. So, I mean, we're still missing something, aren't we? There we go. All right, I think. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to match my screen so it looked exactly his layout to his. So you've got layouts here, docking positions. So you can just click on these and change them if you are following along with his video. And it looks different. That's why you can just click on these until you find the right ones, really. And you'll be right. You can sort that out. Okay. Right. I mean, it does look like it's a different version. So things may have changed slightly, but I will just do what he says. All right. But the first thing he says you got to do is you got to create a node, which is your scene, which is your game actually has scenes in it. So do all levels or use all the menus. A menu is a scene, level 1 is a scene, level 2 is a scene, level 3 is a scene, and a scene then comprises. So node in this case is your scene, and I'm just going to name it world, or let's name it level 1, because let's not name it world, we'll call it level 1 because it's the first level. So I'm just going to call it level 1. I think he calls it world in his, but we'll call it level 1. So that's the first thing you want to do. I mean, you want to add a node. Oh yeah, he's calling it world. I've called it level 1. Yeah. So like it's a root node that everything will be attached to. So this is scene 1, and everything that we add to it from now on will be attached to this. All right, next we're going to add our player. Alright, so because we're making a 2D platform game, we need to add a player. Now, again, I've known through what videos I have watched that the purpley, orangey, whatever color you want to call that, pink, is 3D. And blue denotes 2D. We want to add a kinematic body 2D. Kinematic meaning movement, I believe. So this will be our actual player. This will be the thing that we control. So we want to add kinematic body 2D, not the purple stuff, because we're not doing a 3D game, we're doing a 2D game. And again, I'm going to rename this player. I mean, I don't know what he's going to do, but I need to do this for myself. So we'll call it player. All right. I don't know how if there's a way of dragging. Oh, the mouse wheel. The mouse wheel zooms in, and clicking down on the middle mouse button allows you to move it around as well. So let me just delete that. Delete node. Okay. I'll re-add it. I'm going to call it player. Zoom in. You see, because it again, it looks different to what he's got. Now, don't know why. He's just got a box around it. Well, mine doesn't. Yeah, he gets a bounding box, which, yeah. All right. I mean, I don't know why it looks different for me. Again, it's because it's different. It's a later version. It's irrelevant, but next step was to add the actual object. Now, so what we're going to do is we're going to add a child node, and we're going to add what is called a sprite, which is basically the visual representation of how your asset looks in the game. So it's usually a graphic. So I believe it's just Sprite that we want to add, and we add it as a child to the player. Okay. All right. We're not importing any textures or anything. We're just using what comes with the game at this stage. So to give the player a visual look, it needs a texture. It needs to look like something. So he's just grabbed this and brought it over. There we go. Now that looks exactly like what's on his. We've got the bounding box now. So it must be an earlier version. It put a bounding box. So this is how our player looks at the moment. So if we were to start the game, our player would look like this. Obviously that can be changed by importing your own icons, but as I don't know how to do that yet, we're not gonna even attempt it at this stage. But yep. I do notice there is a warning up here. This gives you warnings. I notice this yellow thing. This node has no shape, so it can't collide or interact with other objects. Consider adding a collision 2D, collision polygon 2D as a child to define its shape. And I'm sure we'll be getting to that. I know we'll be getting to that soon. That means that basically it's an entity without any mass or density, so it'll just pass through things. but let's move on. So all right, okay. So what he wants me to click here, basically. Before I do anything else, he wants me to click on my player icon and click this icon here. And now what this does is restores the object to be selected, or in my case, it will let's have a look. Make sure the object's children are not selectable. So what it means is that if I click this, I can, when I grab my player icon, I'm grabbing the player icon and not the sprite. You see? Apparently if I'd left this unchecked and I went to grab it, I would be grabbing the sprite and not the player icon. So things would be messed up. Just Control Z to undo that. So he's saying to lock it by pressing this icon here, so I can't accidentally move my sprite. I mean, the reason you'd want to do that is because depending on your character, maybe it's a character made up of different parts that you want to slot in together or something, or maybe it needs to be offset from the actual player, and once you've offset it, you don't want to be accidentally moving it or anything. So it's just a way to prevent you from accidentally making up. Why it's not default, I mean, why that isn't a default method, I don't know. I mean, to me it would seem to make more sense to have that as default on, so that once you've created your sprite, you can't accidentally move it when trying to position your player into place, you know. So yeah, to me that should be like, this should be the default state, but it isn't. Anyway, let's carry on. Alright, he's turned snap on. Alright, so he wants us to set up a grid configuration. So by clicking this, it turns snap on. So as you can see now, when I move it, it's snapping. I guess this is just for alignment purposes. If I turn it off, it's free roam. So turning snap on allows me to align it. But he wants us to set up configure the snap grid size, and I think he's asking us to do 32 by 32, which is currently at 10. Okay, so now, yeah, you'll see it's snapping at 32 pixels, and by the looks of it, I think it's the center. Yeah, it's the center position. 0, 32, 64, 128. Yeah, you can see it here at the top along there, the different grid positions. I'll zoom out a little bit and hold the middle mouse to move it. So yeah, mouse to zoom in and out, hold down mouse to drag is what I've discovered. Something that he didn't mention, but anyway, there we go. Okay, if you click on the show grid, there we go. You can see the grid. Alright, he said Control S to save the scene. If you're on PC, Control S. I'm not sure if you could, this is on Mac, but I'm on PC, so Control S, save scene, level 1 TSCN, which is what he's called his world. I've called mine level 1, so just save. Yep, okay. I don't know if it has actual, I mean, I know there are project settings here. I don't know if there's anything to do auto saving. I don't want to go into these because I don't really know them, what they mean, but I don't see anything in regards to auto saving. Oh well. Okay. Moving over here. Carrying on. All right. Okay, so now we're getting into the nitty-gritty bit. Alright. So now we're getting into the scripting side. Our first venture into scripting. Obviously you need a script to enable you to move the player around the screen. So yep, let's have a look. This is where it gets complicated, I guess. Now it has a built-in code editor, which is good. Unity 3D doesn't have a built-in code editor. It takes you to, you have to use like install an external code editor. But yeah, this one has a built-in code editor, which is good, I guess. I mean, considering it's only been 25 megabyte download, it's pretty good. But anyway, I'll try to stop pausing. We'll get on with it. So, okay, don't need this. Apparently, normally this is the function. This is like when a scene is called, this is the initialization function, and this is what is called initially straight away. But he's saying we don't need it. He's saying we don't actually need any of this here. So he's actually just gone and deleted it. So without much explanation, but okay. All right. So the scripting language is called GDScript, and apparently it's similar to Python. Now I haven't used Python. I know nothing about Python, but apparently instead of using brackets like other scripting languages do, like Python, JavaScript, I should say, for example, C#, it uses a tabbing system instead. So my understanding of that is, say this is your line of code. It's nothing, but that's your line of code. So let's say that was an if statement, and then you wanted to, everything under the if statement you wanted to run, you would tab instead of going if, and then you'd have your bracket to say this is everything, run everything in the if statement follows inside these brackets. So you know, if a equals, so just for example, I mean, I don't know how this works, but if a equals, if a equals, this isn't what he's doing, this is just me trying to process it. If a equals b, you would normally go, you know, you'd go return, and then you'd put a bracket, and you would say, you know, b equals a plus 5, you know, for example, and then you might have, you know, an else statement, you know, else, and then you'd probably have another, you know, something like that. So this is in other scripting languages. I mean, this is very rough. I mean, I'm not actually showing a different language here. I'm just making this up as I go along, but you know, you'd probably have something that looks like that. If a equals b, then bracket b equals a plus 5, close bracket, else, and then you'd run a different command. If a didn't equal b, you'd have another command here, for example. So what they're saying is, in this language, this GD script, you don't use brackets, but you do use tabs. So instead of saying what you need to be done, what you want done if a equals b, by putting a bracket around it, you actually tab it in. So everything under if a equals b that is tabbed would be considered part of this, you know, and then it would move on to the next, if that makes sense. It's hard. Like I said, I'm not a programmer, so I'm not a teacher, but that's my understanding of what the difference is between GD script and other scripts. Is you don't put things in brackets, you tab across, and anything that is under in the tab section is part of this function up here. But let me write what his function is. He's asking us to add a physics process function, because we want to move the player around. We are adding, and it's autocomplete. I think you just hit return. It'll put that in. I'll just delete this. So this is our function, and everything in our function. A function is, my understanding of what a function is, it's a set of code that does a particular job. So this particular code will be responsible, I would say, for the movement of the player, but you can have more than one function in a script, and you can call on that function depending on what you want to happen. So he's then said tab in and type pass. Okay. All right. So apparently this is the function we need to move the player. I don't know what pass is. All right. So it's an empty, pass is an empty function or an empty command. It doesn't do anything, but it allows you to attach the tab. So that's why he's done that. So you can put the tab in and just put pass. So you're not actually asking it to do anything yet, though. I think he's just using it as a layout, to get his layout correct. Is tab incorrect? All right. So var is short for variable. Motion is the variable name, and vector2 is the variable type. So basically what this line does is it creates a variable. If you don't know what a variable is, it's basically a piece of information that is stored. So for example, before when I did A equals B, they're two variables. Variable A equals variable B, basically. So that's what a variable is. But in this case, our variable is called motion, or motion with A. Okay, so it's not A, it's called motion. And a vector2 is the type of variable it is. What it basically is saying is that this can have two variables in one, is probably the best way of describing it. It did pop up here before, didn't it, when I did it? So yeah, two variables in one called x, called float as they call it, and one's called y. So a vector2 is basically A and B in one variable called vector motion, but in this case x and y. So it has two variables in one, like I said, x and y. Alright, so we want to make the character move now. Alright. Hey Mick, how you doing, mate? Yes, you are the first. People have been watching, but nobody's been talking. That's, you know, alright. Maybe people are actually interested in learning. Which one? Back up. Oops. Control Z that. I didn't want to do that. Okay. Alright. So now I'm going to put the bit of code in that allows us to move the character. So it's an if statement. So an if statement is if something is happening, then do this, basically. Input dot is underscore action. It's not finding. Why is it not finding it? If input dot is is action pressed. Alright, so if input is action pressed, UI underscore right. And he's put a colon on the end. Right, I know what this means. In the project, in the settings over here, somewhere in input map, here we go. You can see here UI. So where is it? I just saw it. UI right. So here you see UI right. So in here in the input map, your mapping is predetermined. UI right is K for some reason, but it's also the arrow keys, I believe. D-pad right, I believe it's the arrow keys. So UI right is actually calling your settings, your controller settings, which are being predetermined here, which you can obviously, I think, change. I don't know. So what it is saying is if input is action pressed, so if a button is pressed and that button is the right button, so whether that be the letter K or the right arrow key, then you basically want it to do this action, which is motion.x, in his case, equals 100. X being the variable from the vector 2, because the float, remember, it's made up of two floats, x and y. So it's basically saying x is your horizontal movement. 100 means you're moving 100 pixels to the right. The way games work is in the top left-hand corner, it's designated 0, 0. Any movement to the right is a plus number along the x-axis. Any movement to the left is a negative number to the x-axis. Coming down, this is what y is a bit trickier, because coming down is positive, so any movement down is positive, and any movement up would be negative, because it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 down. It doesn't go -1, -2 as you would expect, so it's slightly reversed for the y. But what this is saying is that if the right button is pressed, whichever that right button has been predetermined, then motion of the x equals 100. So it's basically setting the float within the variable motion to 100. So theoretically, your character should start moving at 100 pixels per second, or you know, hey Mikiro, how you doing? So that's basically what that means, from my understanding of scripting anyway, which is very limited. Oh, bear with me. It's a Control S, but something. Control S to save. Oh, there we go. All right, and we click this to run, play the project. No main scene has been defined. Select one. All right, so your main scene is obviously your initiation scene. So select, and we've only got one, so we'll open that, level 1. We want to allow access to the Godot. All right, so if I press right, nothing's happening, which is what's meant to happen. Nothing is meant to happen, because even though we've set the variable for motion x, we haven't actually told it to move yet. So we're going to need to do a command to actually ask the object to move, but at this stage it isn't moving because we haven't told it to. So just close that down, and I suspect that's exactly what he's about to tell me. All right. I don't know why you felt the need to tell me that why you're not hanging around, Nick. I think I was pretty clear in why I'm doing this. I don't need to read your reasons why you don't want to be part of it. That's fine. I understand it's not for everyone. You don't need to tell me. I'm doing it because I want to, and if it keeps me going and keeps me learning, then that's the idea I'm doing. I can understand why people wouldn't want to watch it. I don't actually need you to tell me why you don't want to watch it, because that's just you being negative. Thanks very much. Right, how to use help. I didn't see that. Where did you click? I've lost track of your mouse. Alright, so he wants to go through the help system now. So search help. Kinematic body 2D. So we're looking at kinematic body 2D. Alright, and to bring that up, I just clicked on search help and then typed in kinematic body 2D, and this is basically shows us everything to do with that particular node and all the scripting involved as well. Okay. Alright, so we're going to be using something called move and slide, which allows us to move it. You just went on to go. Linear velocity is the velocity vector in pixels per second. Unlike in move and collide, you should not multiply it by delta. The physics engine handles applying the velocity. And then he said, if you don't know what delta is, don't worry about it. But yeah, I guess we'll figure it out as we're going along. But yeah, move and slide is what we'll be using apparently to actually move the character. So all we're worrying about is the linear velocity and not these other options. Okay. All right. How do you close the docs down? Shit, no, that wasn't it. How do I close it? I don't know. What did he do to close it down? How did he go back to his script? We just went to the script over here. Okay. Hey Eric, I have no idea if there's going to be C++ involved, mate. I don't know. Like I said, I'm just learning as I go along. All right. Move underscore and slide. And I think it's just going to be motion, isn't it? Which is our variable motion. Let's see. Okay, so move and slide is the command to move your sprite. Motion is the variable, which we told earlier. It's a vector 2 that is made up of x and y. Move and slide, x we've determined to be 100. So basically it's saying so let me see if I can explain this here. So motion before here is actually equal to 0, 0. X and Y both are 0, 0. Okay. After we press the right button, motion is equal to 100 and Y remains 0 because we haven't pressed the up arrow key or anything. We haven't set a command to recognize the up arrow key. So motion.x has been changed to 100, but the full variable is actually 100, 0. So it's asking to move. The move and slide says move the character by the variable amount of whatever motion is, which is now 100 on the X, but is still 0 on the Y. So it should just move along the X-axis at is it 100 pixels per second? I'm not actually sure what 100 is, but I guess we'll find out. But that's how my understanding of that is. He hasn't actually explained that, but that's what I think it is. So motion at this stage equals 100, 0. So if we save it and run it, hopefully that's appearing on the screen. Yeah, it is. That's good. Sorry, I didn't check. I couldn't see. And we press the right arrow key, it should move. Well, it didn't, did it? It didn't move. Oh, yeah, it did. It did move. I didn't have the window highlighted. But nothing else moves. That's all it does, is it moves it to the right. And infinitely, because we haven't told it to do anything else. So it just continuously goes. It must be a speed. It must be 100 pixels per second that it's asking it to move to. So if we were to change this to 10, for example, then, and run it, press, it should move slower. There we go, 10 pixels per second. Ah, there we go. Right. Okay. So we'll change that back to 100. Yep. So hopefully you understand that. It's not C++, this is GD script. This isn't C++. This is a scripting language called GD script, which is part of this Godot engine. It uses tabular functions instead of brackets. All right, but yeah, there we go. We successfully managed to do it, and hopefully I've managed to explain exactly my understanding of what's going on here. This is like the dumber's guide to it. Okay, moving on. Okay, he set me a challenge now, so let's see if we can figure this out. He basically now wants me to do my own coding for if I want to move the character to the left. So how I would do that, I mean, I don't know if this is, if I would put in, I mean, this is what I mean, through mine now, I would be putting a else. Or maybe we don't need the else. Let's just try it with an if. So what I'd be doing is copying these two lines. Copy. Okay, it does it. And that would be, I would assume, would be left. And we'd want to change this to -100. All right. I mean, I don't know if this is what we'll do, and I don't know if this is redundant, but so if the left key is pressed, then change motion to -100, so that would put it back in a different direction. Let's, before I start the video up again. So basically what he's asked me to do is to do the left key on my own, which to me would be, well, this, but I don't know if you need an else statement or not in there, but let's just see if that works. So if I do that, it goes. If I do that, oh, there we go. It works. Whether it's the correct way of doing it, I don't know. I guess we'll find out what his suggestion is. I suspect there is probably a cleaner way of doing it, but we've got it moving. Yeah, I get all enthusiastic about things, Mick, and then I give up on them because I don't know what it is. I can't follow something through. And so the whole reason I wanted to do this on a stream was because I would find myself explaining what I'm doing in my own words to you guys, and by doing so, I would probably be also teaching myself at my own level as well, teaching my own understanding. It would allow me to grasp the concepts more and get a better understanding of what I'm doing if I'm trying to relay it to somebody else, if you know what I mean. Instead of just picking up on just doing what I'm told to do without really thinking about it. So that's why I'm doing it, is so I can relay it in my own words by learning as I go along, and it's also then forcing me to actually think about what I'm doing instead of just copy and pasting code and not actually thinking about what I'm copying and pasting, because I'm actually taking the time to explain what I'm doing, therefore thinking aloud, like you said, of what I'm doing. So interpreting what I'm doing for myself. But anyway, that's why I'm doing it. But yeah, Rubber Duck Debugging is if you're talking to a reduct about what you're coding will help you fix bugs in your software. But yeah, I mean, in the past, because I've just followed courses along, I end up giving up on them because I'm not interpreting it. I'm not interpreting it properly, and I haven't given myself a way to express it. So that's why I'm doing it this way, because I thought it would help me learn, and maybe if someone else is interested, it would help them learn. But yeah, but all right, but let's carry on and let's see how he did it. I mean, so far we've only gone 9 minutes into the video. I don't even know how long this stream has gone for so far, so it is a slow process of doing it. We've been streaming for over an hour. So yeah, I mean, to learn, you'd probably be quicker at learning it if you were to follow his video himself, but it's probably working better for me because I'm getting a better understanding of what I'm actually doing by reiterating what I'm doing and everything. So yeah. What did he... Oh, I'm watching my own video there. I don't want to watch my own video. What have I done? I'm on the wrong video. Here we go. Sorry about that. You didn't hear it anyway, so it doesn't matter. He did exactly the same thing, but except he had 2 blank lines in there. He did exactly the same thing. So I got it right in that regards, but I'm sure there is an easy way. So I'm just rewinding. Alright, okay. So when we run the game, you know, it constantly moves across. It's, you know, there's no, you can't stop it. Once you start it, you can't stop it. So it only moves while the buttons are pressed, I think. This is what this next bit of coding is. So we are turning this into an elif, which is basically else if input is y, do -100. That hasn't changed. But then underneath this, we're adding else, which is something that I mentioned earlier. I'm going to tab across, and we just want to set the motion of the X float of the motion variable to 0. Alright, so what we've done here is if we've pressed the right key, X motion is 100 pixels per second to the right. If we've pressed the left key, our motion pixel is -100, so that's 100 pixels to the left. Else, if we haven't pressed either of those keys, we want to set our motion X to 0, which means it should stop. So if we run that, oh, we're missing something. What am I missing? Do we have to put a colon or a semicolon or something? My first bit of do we have to put a colon? Is that it? I've paused the video before he's got to the end. No. Alright, we're missing something. Maybe it's a colon after the, not after there, but after the else. There we go. If you hold the button down, it moves like it should. If you just tap it, it moves. No, mate, it's clearly someone who doesn't read the description of my videos. Seems inefficient. Isn't it always going to be running that loop, even if you're not pressing a key, constantly checking that you're either pressing or not pressing a key? Yeah, it runs, this program, this script is running at 60 frames per second. So it's checking it 60 times every second. So it has to check if the right button has been pressed, if the left button is being pressed, and what to do. It's basically the controller for the player. So this is an infinite loop that runs at 60 frames per second, which you need, because you can't just have it running once, because if you have it running once and then you go to press the button again, it's not going to do it. It's not going to move. But there's probably an easier, a tidier way of doing it, probably by setting variables up here for X and Y, having its own variable set, so you don't have to. But I don't know, we'll see what happens. Like I said, I'm not a programmer, and we don't want to get too advanced too early. All right. So the motion variable, like I said before, is a vector2, which means it's made up of two floats, an x and a y. We've set the x here, depending on whether a button is pressed, whether the right button is pressed, then it's x of positive 100. If the left button is pressed, x will be negative 100, and if neither button is pressed, x is 0. So this, like I said, this is a script that is running 60 frames per second, so it's going through this 60 times every second. So what we've done here is now we've set the y float to plus equal to 10. Now what that means is when it goes through the first run, remember it's running 60 frames per second, the first frame run through for frame 1, we are telling it that the y value is equal to 10. The second run through, we are adding 10 to that. Y then becomes 20. Third frame, 30. Fourth frame, 40, and so on and so on and so on until it's run at 60 frames per second. So after 1 second, the y value will be 10 times 60. So it will be 600. So because we've now set a y value here to starting with 10, when it runs this move and slide motion, it's not just going to run at the x value, and well, it is running x and y, but previously y was 0. The y value is going to be 10, so therefore it will start falling down, remembering going down is positive, going up is negative. So it will start falling down, but it will accelerate at 10 pixels per frame. So it will start slowly, but then with each frame it will get faster and faster and faster. So it should pretty much, because it's so fast, 60 frames, it should pretty much fall off the screen instantly as soon as we start running. There we go. As soon as it started running, it falls off the screen. Now I don't know if I can move it while it's, yeah, I can, but it's, so there we go. So that allows us to, I mean, I can see where we're going to be going with this. It's going to allow us to position the character on a platform. So it will fall to a platform once collisions have been set up, and which then allows us to. So what we've basically done is created gravity. This is basically gravity that we've created here. Gravity is 10 frames per second. Oh, an acceleration of 10 frames per second. Yeah, no, it's 60 frames per second. It's basically, that's what it is. 60 frames per second. It's limited. Again, I assume that's in the project settings somewhere here. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't looked at it. I suspect somewhere in here it's set the frames per second somewhere. I don't know, but I'm not playing with the project settings or anything like that yet. Right, moving on. All right, okay. So what we're going to add now is a wall, basically. So we're adding a static body 2D, which is the difference between, this was a kinetic body, which means it's movement, it moves. Static obviously means it stays still, it can't be moved. It's not going to be moving at all. Hey Sato, how you doing, mate? So we're going to call this wall. He's just changed his name to player as well, so that's good. I wasn't getting ahead of myself. So this is going to be wall, and we want to also add a sprite. A sprite is a graphical representation of what. So we're going to add a sprite, and we're going to use the same. I know we're going to be using the same texture. There we go. And again, I think we need to lock this so it can be moved. I know it looks the same, but I'm pretty certain we're going to change that so it does look different. It's because we haven't imported any of our own graphics. We're just using the graphics that come with the project. So this is static. This isn't controlled by me. It's an object within the game that this will eventually interact with, I would say. So yeah, that's a static body, which is under the wall. It's not a child of the player. It's a child of the world, of the level. The sprite, the graphic is a child of the actual thing, and we've locked it and whatever. But yeah, so we'll move it down. If we were to run that now, because we haven't set any collisions up, that should just fall straight through it. Yeah, there we go. I'm getting a little ahead, I think. I'm going to have to take a break in a minute, guys, because my mouth's gotten really dry from all the talking. And I'm going to need a drink. Alright, he just basically said if you accidentally make a sprite, you know, separate to your wall, you can just click and drag it onto the wall and it will become a child. That's what he's basically was going on about there. But yeah, I lock the, you know, when you click on wall and lock it so that when you grab, you're moving the whole thing and not just the sprite. If you don't lock it and you drag it, you'll move the sprite, but the actual node will remain in place there. So you want to make sure you lock everything into place. There we go. That's what that button does. It locks it, so I can't just grab the sprite and accidentally move it. I can just move the wall. Okay, carrying on. All right, okay. Visibility, modulate, click on black, and it makes it black. There we go. So now it looks different. So when we run it, it shouldn't be the same. It should look, yeah. There we go. Remember, I said the blue square is the this square here is your game space, is your actual screen. When you run the game, this is what you'll be looking at, everything in amongst here. So if I change that and move that down to the bottom like that and run, you can see it there. It's at the bottom as such. Let's do a save. All right, I'm going to just take a quick break, guys, because my mouth has gotten really dry and I need a drink. But we'll carry on. I can't believe how long this has actually taken to run through this. But I'm glad I've done it, because I do feel like I've learnt better. I mean, I watched this video on its own earlier without actually following it, and I feel like I have a better understanding by doing what I'm doing. So I mean, hopefully, if you are interested, you are getting something from this, but it's more for my benefit than just yours. But anyway, I'll be back in a minute, guys. I'm just going to take a quick break. sorry about that. I just want to grab a drink. Mouth is dry. I needed to get some. I probably need to get some drink in here. I just noticed the debug window, the output at the bottom there. Renderer GeForce GTX 970 PCI. I really need to get a better graphics card. That is something I would love to buy it myself, is to upgrade that. PCI Express. Anyway, right, okay, let's back to it. Keep on going. Alright, so I mean, basically what I did when I just made the wall black, and I did that by clicking on the sprite, going under canvas item in the inspector over here, and under visibility it allowed me to make this whatever I wanted. I could just, you know, change it, as you can see, but we just made it black. That's what we did there, just to make it look different. So when we run it, it's not the same icon. It's just a little cheat, so we don't have to bring in a new graphic, a different graphic for it. Alright, so what we're doing now is we're setting it up to have collisions, so it has collision boxes. So what we've done is I've gone onto the wall and I've added a collision shape 2D by clicking up here, looking for collision shape 2D. That basically adds a collision box, and then once we've done that, we want to add the shape of the 2D. Now there are various shapes. We're just going to use for this is rectangle, which you can see here. Now then, this looks different. This is obviously because I'm using a different version, a later version. This looks different. What I'm looking at the video is it has an inner 2 dots, and then it has an outer 2 dots. I think they've actually removed the outer 2 dots because for scaling purposes. The outer dots were for scaling, and you don't want scaling, you just want to change the shape. So I would hope that by dragging this, we're not changing the scaling, so that's fine. Because apparently if you change the scaling, it can really mess things up. So these 2 dots allow us to determine the size of the collision box, and we want the collision box to encompass everything. So to do that, you just pick and drag these things, but I think there's also a way of doing it somewhere in here as well, but I don't know. I don't know. I might know collision box size, but I don't see it. It doesn't show it. Anyway. He's having some issues he's just sorting out, which have clearly been fixed since. Since this version. Yeah, now he's just fixed his error. So he's just explaining now that you don't want to drag the outside dots, but there are no outside dots in this version. Alright, now he just showed how to manually enter it. So let me just, I missed it. Well, how did he do that? Sorry, he changed it. How did he do that? How did he? Oh, right, okay. If you click on the rectangle shape, you can. This is where you can set the size of it. So this is, remember the 32 by 32 is the size. So yeah, it is Sylogist. Sorry, I didn't want to play game. I've been wanting to learn this for a while, and I thought this would be a good way of making me learn it by just doing a stream on it. But yeah, you know me, mate. I'm always doing something different. So that's it. This is, yeah. So if I was to change that to 16, there you go. But you want it to be exactly the same size. So just leave it 32 by 32. All right. All right, I'm going to do it to the player as well now. So we want a collision. We want to add a node. Collision shape 2D, create. Again, we want it to be, because it's a rectangle, we're just using a rectangle shape. This time I'll use this. I won't use the boxes. 32 by 32. And there we go, we've added it to the player. Do a save. So if I do a run, a save, nope. It's still not. I suspect that there's got to be some sort of coding involved to actually say, hey, has a collision happened? Yes, then do this. So we probably haven't. Why has that one got a... That's why I'd set it as a child to the sprite, not as a child to the player. Oh, so it does work. Okay, so it automatically works. Sorry, I just set this as a child of the sprite and not a child of the player, so that's where I'd gone wrong there. So now when we run it, it doesn't fall through, and we can move along and it will just drop off really quickly. So there we go. Oh, I think I've gone ahead a little bit. And he's running it, and ta-da, same thing. All right, so basically now he's saying click on the wall, Control D to duplicate, and then you can just drag your wall, and then Control D again, drag, Control D again, drag, and just keep creating your walls. So it's Control D, 1, 2, 3. I think it will find 1, 2, 3. I know there is a better way of doing this, which he does show you later, but I couldn't tell you how to do it yet. There is another way of doing this, which will show us later in the videos. So basically what we've done there is we've made a mess, really, let's be honest. I mean, I know this is what he's going to do next. So we've created a whole bunch of walls. I'll just drop them, which is a bit of a mess. So he's going to, I know this is what he's going to do. He's going to tell us to create a new node. Create. I'm just going to call it walls. I'm just skipping ahead. And then click and drag your walls. Shift click them and drag them into there. It becomes like a folder hierarchy. And so that way all your walls are under this node here. It makes it better. I know that's exactly what he's going to do next, because I remember that from when I watched it before. no, that's exactly what he just did as well. I'm just going to, we'll do a quick test run. And there you go. All the collisions are working. We haven't got an up arrow key yet, so I can't do a run. A jump, I should say. Yeah, there we go. All right. So we are now going into jumping. So we're into the coding side of things, and we're looking at a right, we're looking at this boolean is on floor. So a boolean is basically it has a yes or a no. It either is true or it's false. That's basically it. Has so is on floor is basically, is it on the floor? True, it is. False, no, it's not on the floor. So that's all a boolean is, yes or no, true or false. Okay, so if you're touching the floor, if you run this and you're touching the floor, then the variable, the boolean will return a true. Otherwise it returns false. Okay, so this is what we're going to be using now. We're going to be using is on floor. So if you go into our script, above our move and slide, because remember our move and slide code is the code that tells our character to move. So what we're doing is we're going to ask it if is on floor. So it's saying, so keep in mind this is a script for the player, so everything that we do is concerning the player. So we don't have to say is the player on the floor, because we're scripting for the player. Okay, so by default is on floor is just basically saying is the player on the floor, because that the script belongs to the player. Okay, so is on, so he's saying is the player on the floor is the question. So if the player is on the floor, and if input, this is like up here, so basically input being the jump key in this case, and we're doing, whereas before it was is action pressed, which allowed you to hold the key down. This time we're just doing just press, so that means pressed once. So is action just press, so it's basically looking for a single press of the jump key on this one, whereas this is action pressed, it allows you to look for a constant pressing. It allows you to hold the button down. This one, it won't allow you to hold the button down. I think you have to individually press it each time you want to jump. You have to press it, press the key. So you can't just hold it down and be constantly jumping, I think is what this means. I guess we'll find out when we run it. And again, the UI up is the predetermined key binding for up, for jumping, that has been set in our project settings. Remember before when I showed you the project settings, it had an input map, and you'll see there UI up has already been, oh no, it's keyboard, right? Keyboard up. Yeah, these are must be joypads. Yeah, keyboard up. So that's the up button. Before I thought that was K for the letter K, but it's not. Keyboard and device is like a control pad, a joystick or something like that. So this line is saying if input, which is a key press, is action just pressed, which is just a single press of a key, it ignores, my understanding, we'll test it, but it ignores any holding of the key down. And if that key is equal to the up arrow key, which has been predetermined in the settings, then we want to run the next bit of code. Which we are setting at motion.y, which is the y float variable of negative 400. So if you followed this along, remember I said this is running at 60 frames per second. So for each frame, the y motion is increasing at 10. So frame 1 is 10, frame 2 is 20, it equals 20. Frame 60 will be 6, it'll be up to 600 by then. So if we were to press, so that's basically gravity. It's saying gravity is this. So what this is going to call is, if we now press the up arrow key, we are changing this figure from 10 to negative 400. It suddenly becomes 400, but because this is running at 60 frames per second, once we've pressed this button, y becomes negative 400, but on the next frame it becomes negative 390, and so on until it reaches 0, and then it will start increasing again. So frame 2 will be negative 380, and then it will be negative 370. So that means that gravity is still happening. There's still a force pushing us down. So we'll be able to jump at 400 pixels per second, but gravity is still in place. So those 400 pixels per second will be reducing every frame by 10 pixels per second until it reaches 0, and then it will start going back into a positive number, which means then we'll start falling back down to the ground again until, well, forever, until we hit, unless we hit something. But gravity will still be increasing at 10 pixels per second per frame, if you know what I mean. So again, I'm speaking this out loud, so I'm teaching myself and interpreting it myself. So pressing Y will temporarily change gravity to a figure of minus 400, which negative means up when it comes to the Y-axis, but for every frame after I've pressed that button, that negative 400 will keep increasing in value. So with it being a negative number, that means it will start heading towards 0. I'm learning how to make games. Job, how are you doing? That's what I'm trying to do. All right, he's going to go into something complex here, so I'll run the game and I'll show you why. It's left and right works fine, okay, but the jump key isn't working, which is basically the way it should be. It shouldn't be working, which is what he's saying now. He's going to go into and explain to me why it's not working. And I suspect it has something to do with the fact that it's moving. I don't know. Mr. Ubisoft, shut up. So let's have a look. Okay, let me just code this. All right, so what this print function does that I've just added, you see down here in the output, down below, it will send a message to here if this is true. Okay, so if we're on the floor, it would tell me it's on the floor when we run the game. So oh, I forgot the quotation marks. There we go. Let's try that again. Right. So, oh yeah, I know what's going to happen. So it doesn't recognize that it's on the floor, basically. So that's why we're not getting, and I know why this is. It's because we haven't told it which direction gravity is. Because it's a 2D platform game, gravity can either be up and down like this, or it could actually be along the z-axis, even though it's a 2D game. It could be looking at this saying, well, actually, is this a top-down platform game or is it a side-scrolling game? By default, it treats it like it's a top-down. So gravity is pushing into the screen as such, not down the screen by default. So even though it's a 2D game, so what we want to do is to tell it which direction gravity is. We want it to basically say that gravity is falling down the screen, not into the screen, because we are not playing a top-down platform game. We are actually playing a side-scrolling. So what we're going to have to do is define gravity's direction, where it is, in what way, and then it will recognize that as it's colliding with something. So basically, it thinks that the back of this icon is basically, it's checking the back of this icon to see if it's touching the floor, which it clearly isn't, because it's the bottom of the icon we want to recognize. So I mean that's a very dumb, stupid way of explaining it. So I think that's what we need to do. We need to set up the direction of gravity, which is what he's going to do. I only know that because, like I said, I've watched these videos without actually following along with them. Floor normal is what we're looking at. up direction used to determine what is a wall and what is a floor or ceiling. Everything is considered a wall for top-down games, right? So yeah, so basically floor normal. The default says everything is a wall, nothing is a floor, because it's a top-down game. So we need to change it, because this isn't a top-down game, it's a side-scrolling game. We need to change that so that it recognizes objects as floors and ceilings, not just walls. Alright, okay, let me see if I can now decipher what he's just done. Alright, so we've set up a new variable called up. Now the difference between this variable and this variable is this is called a constants variable, which means it is never going to change. It will always be, you know, whatever we set it as. It will never change. It is a constant. You can't be changed. So constant is up. The constant, it's a constant variable we're calling up. It's a vector 2, so it has a float of an x and a float of y. X is horizontal, y is vertical. And we're setting the vertical to -1, which is telling us that up is this way basically and not that way. Okay, and then in the move and slide, we are, this is the bit where I find it, obviously we're setting the motion, so our motion is determined by what button we press, so whether that be up, left or right. But if we just click on move and slide, yeah, so move and slide is made up of a velocity, which we've set the variable as called motion, and then floor normal is the second one, which we've set as the constant variable up. So if we hadn't set these variables here, I believe that this would be written as move and slide 0, open bracket 0, 0, and then maybe another bracket, I don't know, open and close bracket, and it would be 0, -1. We'd basically be setting each of these individual components of the move and slide function. I don't know, I find it's hard for me to explain, but yeah, a move and slide is made up of different aspects. Up until this point we've only been using the motion aspect, which is the velocity of the player, But we also need to say, just keep in mind that the gravity, this part is basically saying, but also remember that gravity is pulling down, the floor is at the bottom, isn't at the sides, and all that crap. Something like that anyway. This is basically saying that the game is a platformer game, not a top-down game. This here. And if we wanted, by the way, I'm holding the control key down and clicking, but then there's next, bool stop on slope equal false. So I'm assuming that's like if you're on a slope, you can set this to whether a stop in place or to continue to slide. Max slides equals 4. I don't know. Max angle is 0.853. I would assume that this is something that you can say if you're moving and you reach a collision box with an angle on it. If that angle is less than this, you can travel up it. Otherwise, you can't travel up the side of the object. Infinite inertia equals true. I mean, that probably is keeping the player moving constantly, but we're not setting any of these. All we've done is set the velocity, so when we press the button, we're moving at this speed, and making sure that it recognizes which way, whether it's a side-scrolling or a top-down game here, is layman's term. Whoops. I think. So if we run it now, I think that's what it means. We should jump. Yeah, there we go. Now we've got the jump. So we can... You can't... Yeah, see, I said if I hold down the left and right buttons, it works. But if I hold down the up key, it doesn't constantly jump. And once again, it's because of this. Is action pressed, which in other words, is the key being held down, or is action just pressed? It says we're not interested if the key is being held down. We just want to know if it's being pressed. If it's being held down, just ignore everything after the initial press. So that means you have to constantly press it to jump. Am I going to buy the Division 2? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know, mate. I got no idea. I know it's getting pretty good reviews. I'll probably get it if I've got people to play with. Oh yeah, look. Sorry. When we ran you see now on floors working. When we run the game, it recognizes when it's on the floor, which is why this is going on floor, on floor. Every frame it's telling me now, you're on the floor, you're on the floor, you're on the floor, you're on the floor. So your jump key will work. But remember how I explained it. When you jump, it will change the value to -400, which is an upwards motion. But because we're then adding 10 to that value, it will when it hits the next frame, it will reduce it by 10 till eventually it reaches 0, and then it will start going into a positive number, which means the character starts falling, even though it's hit the floor. Because I haven't pressed the button, that value is still increasing. So that if I leave it for a while, and you'll see that the gravity is so strong because I haven't touched the up button, it instantly falls like that. So even though it falls gently, if I leave it, remember it's gone 400, 390, 380, 370, 360, all the way down to 0, and then it's increasing to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 600. Gravity's increasing by a factor of 600 pixels per frame per second. So when I do finally fall off, gravity is so strong that it's an instant. There's no gentle falling. It's just an instant. So what we need to do is what we're going to do next is correct that, so that it's always gently falling. For me, before we do it, like this, I'm not gonna watch the video at this stage. I'm gonna just see what would happen if through my like how I would do it. I don't know if this is true, but I don't know if this would work, but I don't know, this is just me thinking. So what I've done here, if is on floor and there's been a key press, motion of y is 0. So what that would then do is, if I'm on the floor and I haven't pressed the key, gravity is that the force of gravity is set to 0. So it would go through the frame. Frame 1 would say, hey, gravity is now set at 10. Check for inputs, right? It hits this part of the line within the frame and goes, hey, is it on the floor? Oh, it is on the floor. No, that's not right. I've put the else in the wrong place. Hang on. I've put the else in the wrong place. Else. Yeah. So it has to be under here. It has to be under this statement because it's only true if it's on the floor. So let's see if this will be. So if it's on the floor, has a button been pressed? No. Gravity, the force of gravity is 0. If it's on the floor, okay? If it's not on the floor, so if it says if is on floor and it isn't, so it returns a false, it says it would ignore all of this and just go back, run, move and slide, go back to here, and gravity will then become 20. 30 until it reaches a point where the character is on the floor. So if I move my character off the floor, this value would start to increase again until at such point as it touches the floor, and then this value will then reset back to 0. That's how I would program it. Whether or not he programs it, but let's see if that would work. So it's on floor. We've got the thing popping up there saying on floor. We jump. Oh, wrong button. We jump. So he's on the floor at the moment. Still working. Now, if I slide off, before it would have been an instant, but what it should do is say it should recognize that when it's not on the floor, and then it should just fall gently now. There we go. It does work. Whether or not that's what he does, I don't know. Let's have a look and see if that's what he does. Actually, before we do that, just to show So I'm going to put else print, just so you know, you can see not on floor. Okay. So what I've done here is saying if it's on the floor, then print on floor in the output. Okay. Check to see if I've pressed a button. If I've pressed a button, check motion to be minus 400. If I haven't pressed a button, then set motion to 0. Okay. If I'm on the floor. If I'm not on the floor, print not on floor. But remember that this value is increasing every frame until such a time as I'm back on the floor. So when I fall off, when I'm jumping, we should see not on floor, not on floor, not on floor here. When I touch the floor, this should change to on floor, on floor, on floor, on floor. All right, so on floor, if I jump, not on floor, not on floor, on floor, jump, on floor. Funny that, isn't it? When I'm moving left to right, that's a bit strange, that one. It's confused. But when I fall off, not on floor, and then I touch the floor. So you can see how that's working. Alright, so we'll get rid of these statements, we don't need them now. So we just run it now. It will still run, but it won't update with the okay. He's just explaining how gravity continuously increases at the moment. All right, so he has shown a different way of doing this. He hasn't used else. He hasn't used an else statement. Even though it works, apparently there is a built-in function in the move and slide which allows you to set motion in place. So what he said was the move and slide vector, remember it's a vector 2, when it finishes it returns a value of whatever it is. So when a body stops and it isn't falling, it will have a value 0 0. So it returns that value of 0 0, which we are not. Every time as it runs, we are not using it. We are not using that value that it's returning. I'm just trying to see. So returns the linear velocity of that road, slide collision occurred to get more collision. All right, so we're not actually accessing that information with the script that we've got at the moment. So whenever it's running, move and slide has a motion vector of whatever every frame that changes on every frame. We're not accessing it, we're not seeing it. But if we were to set motion, which is our variable, to equal to move and slide, we are basically saying that motion, our motion vector, a variable, is equal to whatever this returns. So when the character isn't moving, then motion is going to become 0 0. I think that is what he's talking about there. All right, so he means when the body stopped. So the it doesn't say it here. It says if a slide collision has occurred. So when a collision occurs, a linear velocity vector, which is the two floats x or y, is returned, which is invisible to us. We don't see it. It's not part of the code. So basically, it's saying as our character moves, when our character hits this in the background, it then says linear velocity is now 0 0. Okay, so what we want to do is match our motion to that linear velocity. When it hasn't hit the wall, so when there hasn't been a collision, the linear velocity is whatever we've set it at, which is in the script. So the linear velocity, the motion, is whatever we've set it at. The movement that's going on is based on these vectors, variables that we've set up here, the motion and that, because it's this. But as soon as a collision occurs, the linear velocity becomes 0 0. So we want our motion also to become 0 0. So instead of running the else statement, which I did, apparently we just put motion in front. We say our motion variable wants to equal whatever the linear velocity variable is that is hidden in this that we don't see. So when it collides, it will return a 0, and motion will equal 0 as well. Apparently, I mean, that's my understanding of how it works. I'm sure there's somebody who could explain it better. But yeah, we get the same thing doing it that way. So it's less coding, less lines of code, no else needed. Right. My way works, but this obviously is cleaner. The way he explained it was, how I used the print to show whether or not we were on the floor. What he did was he did a print motion, which is something that we don't see because we haven't set it. If I just write pass in front of that, does it ignore that? We don't want to ignore it. We'll just get rid of it. So if I run this now, oh no, sorry, hang on, I made a mistake there. This isn't, if I put it in brackets, it's asking me to type the word motion. If I do it this way, it's printing a variable. So you can see that gravity, we're not moving left to right. There we go. When I move left to right, the X float changes, but you can see the gravity is constant, right? Until I jump, and then it goes negative, bang, negative, like that, until I hit the ground again, which is going to be a positive number of 400. When I touch the ground, it should be 400. So motion equals move and slide and if we run it, there we go, 0, 0, 0, because it's not moving. So when I jump, it then goes 0, 0, 0. Because of that motion linear velocity, that linear vector that we don't see but is there, that we haven't. There we go. So let's get rid of that. All right. So what he's doing here is we're setting up more variables, constants that aren't, you know, these things. So gravity we've changed to 20. You know, currently it's set to 10 in here. We've now set a variable called gravity, which equals a figure, an amount of 20. Never changes. We've set a speed of 200, which we've set here as 100 or negative 100 of 200 here. So we've got a variable called speed, and then we've got jump height of minus 500, which is currently this value here, minus 400, that we've written into the code. So instead of having these numbers here, so motion along, we just type gravity now. So motion is equal to gravity. Gravity is equal to 20. Okay. Motion x is equal to speed. Motion left x is equal to negative speed. And then this is, I don't know why it's called it jump height. I wouldn't have called it jump height. All right. So the reason for doing this is if, you know, obviously this is only a short line of, it's only 26 lines long, but if we've got a code which is 500 lines long and we access motion x and we've set it as 10 and we've written through and we've referenced motion x multiple times within our code, so, you know, we've written in our code motion x equals 10 20 times, but we decide that we want to change how fast the player moves. It's moving too slow, we need to up that. Instead of going through and changing it 20 times, because we've set a constant variable here, all we need to do is at the variables at the beginning is change speed from 200, we'll change it to 150 and see how that runs. So previously it was on 100. So I'll show you here. So if we run it, it's moving at 100 there. Now if we stop it and we change this constant to 200 instead, see, we don't have to, I don't have to go change that to 200 and then change that to negative 200. I only have to change it once and then run it. It's moving much quicker. Oh. But I can't jump up there anymore because we've changed it. Jump height minus, I thought that would have worked, minus 300. No. What was it before then? 600. Minus 550. 550 works. There we go. I don't know how you can change direction in the air. That's because it's that'd be something along here, like you'd want to put is on floor. If is on floor here, to say before this line here, you put if is on floor, and then all of these would fall under if is on floor, which would prevent you from changing direction when the character isn't on floor, so it would constantly you wouldn't be able to switch backwards, but we're not going to do that. He's just changed his jump height to minus 550 as well. Alright, well, I mean, that's the first video. I can't believe, I mean, that was a 27-minute video that I've just gone through, and it's actually turned out to be nearly 3 hours long doing it this way. But that's alright, because I have a better understanding now. When I watched it the first time, okay, I had an understanding, but I didn't have a good understanding of it. But now watching it doing it at that pace, doing it at my own pace, and speaking out loud, it's allowed me to do a better understanding of what's going on. So I feel like, even though it's taken a very long time just to go through such a short video, I feel like I know more than what I did when I first watched the video without actually doing this. So I still think it's good, and I still feel like this is probably a good thing to do. But I'll stop the stream there. I'll leave like I said, the link to the video that I followed is in the description. By all means, if you want to try this for yourself, go and watch the video. It is a playlist. You will be able to then go on to the next step. But if you are interested and want to actually learn along with me, by all means, that would be great. I would love for people to be learning along with me, because then we can help each other. I've put a link in the description of where you can get the program. You can get it on Steam. It's called Godot, G-O-D-O-T. But just follow the link in the description to get the actual download. It's only, like I said, it's only a 25 meg download. But yeah, but I'm gonna end that one for now. Next time I will be learning a little bit more later on. So every time I want to learn this, I'm going to live stream it, because it helps me learn, because I have to speak out loud. And if I wasn't live streaming it, I wouldn't be speaking out loud, because I'm not one of those people who talks to himself. So when I come to do the next video, I will do another stream. So I'll be doing these sessions in between my normal gaming sessions. So this is just something new. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you have watched it, please leave a like. And if you do want to join in next time, by all means, do so. But thanks for watching, everyone. I'll catch you all next time anyway. So bye for now.